Hey guys, it's almost 2 a.m. here in the States, and my eyes are on London, England, where we're witnessing one of the greatest meltdowns in the history of, I guess, British politics, obviously, but could be worldwide. This is one of those rare cases where even like somebody wins a race and basically breaks their ankle. And that's what Theresa May did. She is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom now. And instead of the broader mandate that she was looking for in the election, you're watching the live results as of right now to the left. What you're seeing instead is somebody who she started out with the majority that was gained by David Cameron, her predecessor, and she squandered enough political capital in probably the easiest race to win in British history, all because of her incompetence. And I think the British people might pay a huge price due to what she's done in order to basically just validate her own political capital, or basically in order to gain more of a confidence in herself at the expense of the real interests of the British people. I haven't commented that much on Theresa May. The most memorable moment for me in terms of her were two moments. Sorry. I remember back last year when David Cameron resigned, that or when he was preparing to, he basically resigned and served as a caretaker prime minister for I think about a month, and the British Conservative Party broke out into this crazy election season where there were like 7 or 8 different candidates that wanted to take over, and week after week they all just kicked the shit out of each other and dropped out one by one. Okay, so over there, a leadership election, it's not like over here with primaries. It's basically you talk smack about each other, and eventually some of you just drop out and you pretend that you're supporting the other person. So what happened at the end was that there was only one other person left who was she was more popular than Theresa May, I believe, or at least much more popular in terms of than would have been expected. And her name was Andrea Leadsom. So it was basically a race between 2 British women for the head of the Conservative Party. And what happened? Andrea Leadsom, the opponent, made some crack about Theresa May not knowing how to lead the British people because she's never been a mother, and she withdrew. So there wasn't even a vote. So in my opinion, Theresa May's legitimacy as the head of her party has never truly been established. It was basically by default. Nobody ran against her. She became prime minister basically because the previous guy just stepped aside. He resigned, and she just walked into the job. And based on what I've heard from a number of sources, open sources, it's not people that are in private or close to her, but for example, Nigel Farage, but also all sorts of people from all over the spectrum. In her previous job, she was Home Secretary, which is basically, I think that they're responsible mostly for internal security. That might be comparable to the Minister of the Secretary of Homeland Security here. She was one of the more incompetent ones. Immigration is one of their big responsibilities. She was very incompetent when it came to that, because she'd come to office with the goal of reducing immigration, I think, by 100,000 people per year. And as we all know, the United Kingdom has experienced a wave of immigration that really showed that it's coming apart at the seams, the society. It's society where they've instituted so many aspects of socialism, or at least Keynesian economics, which is a little different from socialism. That's when the private sector is used to basically prop up corrupt public sector projects like public housing and the National Health Service over there, which is a disaster now. It's been hacked. And I'll be doing a different video on that next week, probably, about how, based on her performance in the debate and what the questions were, if we were ever to get national health care or universal health care in the United States, we would be dealing with the same problems that they're having over there. I mean, I'm going to tease it a little. For example, their nurses were complaining about a 1% increase in salary per year during a recession, or also during a time when costs of living were rising in the United Kingdom. So we're talking about somebody who was extremely unpopular for all of her policies. And I just got the impression that she was about as incompetent of a political candidate as you could get. The other memory that I had, I said that there were two. One was that race. The other one was that she came to the U.S., and this has nothing to do. This was actually like a good point. She appeared next to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump had been a bigger booster for Brexit than Theresa May had. And she's standing there at the joint press conference. And what happens? This idiot reporter from America, asks her what she thinks is going to happen with U.S. relations with Mexico after Donald Trump has been elected. And I think it was an embarrassing moment for me as an American, because only an idiot would ask a question of a foreign leader meeting with your president about a totally unrelated political issue that was basically between a third country and the United States. So, that's to me, that was an embarrassing moment for us as Americans. And she actually handled it very professionally, but it kind of tells you something. She said that a question about the relations between the United States and Mexico should be decided by the United States and Mexico, which is a perfect answer, very diplomatic. But then I saw her in the debates, and she looked flat. She looked diplomatic, to be honest. And this was the person who was not exactly an electrifying figure. She was an establishment candidate. And that's what I'm getting into right now. Now I was coming on here prepared to, I was waiting the whole night. I was waiting to gloat about TYT being wrong about the election. They always predict zany outcomes. And what did they predict this time? Here, let me show you.
Last week I told you he was closing in on Theresa May, and it put a huge dent in her lead. I'm going to tell you more about that in a second. But first, I'd like to remind you that about a year ago, I tweeted out saying I'm going to double down on my prediction from 3 days ago. Jeremy Corbyn will be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Doesn't matter when the elections are held. So I was, of course, referring to the next time there would be a public election where the voters would get the vote. And if you go back and find that tweet and you look at the replies, you'll see that about 70% of them say, don't know anything about UK politics. Jeremy Corbyn has no chance whatsoever. But it doesn't really matter. The video we put up from last week talking about how he's closing the lead, same exact tweets. Oh, no way, not Corbyn. And it's all over the press. I was just in the UK. And the headlines are like, shock poll, fear that Corbyn is closing in. Why is that a fear? Gee, I wonder which side they're on. Anyway.
So it's an interesting take on the election from Cenk Uygur. As I showed you in the previous clip, Jeremy Corbyn will not be Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Cenk Uygur, and I did release a video on this last week, Sargon of Akkad, who has an audience that's massive across the world. but maybe not as much in the United Kingdom, also made fun of it. And Cenk Uygur was right about a couple things, but wrong about the most important thing that he predicted. He's right that Jeremy Corbyn is, definitely the anti-establishment candidate, whereas Theresa May was the establishment candidate. And what she did was the equivalent of the Hillary Clinton approach in terms of, at least outward appearances, not in terms of conduct. During the campaign, first of all, Theresa May did not directly debate anybody. And remember, in the UK, you're typically faced with 7 or 8 other party leaders in these debates. There's the leaders of the Liberal Democrats, the Labour Party, the Conservative Party. There's UKIP. There's the Green Party. There's the Welsh Party, Plaid Cymru, and then there's the Scottish National Party. They all usually are participants in these debates, and they can get pretty interesting. I've watched them before. I watched them a couple years ago, and it's been very telling that Theresa May didn't want to appear on the debate stage with these people. She did appear on BBC Question Time and didn't perform very well. It looked very wooden. People were getting her with the questions, and this was clearly this was a Hillary Clinton type campaigner, very flat, low emotion, basically a consensus candidate. She's not somebody who inspires anybody, and that's the result that they get. And now we have a hung parliament. Now let me explain what that means for you and for the guy to the left. Buffalo yogurt. A hung parliament basically means this, that the party that won the most seats still can't get a majority. They don't have a majority of the seats in parliament, so they can't form a government by themselves. So basically the Queen, in Britain at least, has to request to the preferred person to form a new government, and it's happened before. The last time it happened, it actually happens pretty rarely in the UK. It happened in 2010 when the Conservatives won pretty much the highest share, but they didn't have enough seats, so they just formed a coalition with the Liberal Democrat Party, and they basically had a government that was a disaster. It ended up, it was more of a disaster for the Liberal Democrats, because what happened was that the Conservatives were able to push their economic agenda, which was austerity, meaning that they would cut benefits, cut all government spending in order to deal with the recession. Remember, this was 2010, and they were able to push it off and attribute it to their coalition partners, the Liberal Democrats, because the leader of the Liberal Democrats was this guy named Nick Clegg, who actually lost his seat tonight. In the last election, they lost almost all their power. The Liberal Democrats basically that they were blamed for all the policies of the Tories, the Conservatives. Those of you in the United States, for the British, it might seem a little amateurish, but the Conservatives are called the Tories colloquially. So, anyway, going on, the hung parliament basically means that you form a coalition and basically you divide roles or something. In this case, they are not as far from a majority as I think they were in 2010. However, it's a much more embarrassing situation, because they thought at the beginning of the campaign that this Jeremy Corbyn, this idiot that Buffalo Yogurt basically worships, they thought that he would be such an awful candidate, and I'll explain in a second why he was such a horrible candidate, that they would win a massive overmajority. They would have a mandate that would be unimpeachable in Parliament. That's not what's happened tonight. they've lost the majority entirely. So what would happen is that they need a party that has enough of an overlap with the conservative policies in order to give them the needed majority. And there happens to be one party that does that. Let's pull up a little clip of them.
The leaflets have been delivered, the manifesto's published. This is a crucial election. The MPs we elect will have more power than in any previous parliament.
Anyway, that guy didn't know exactly how right he was about what he said. He happens to be a member of the Democratic Unionist Party, which, if you don't know, they are the hardcore right-wing anti-Irish party in Northern Ireland. They want Northern Ireland to remain a Protestant province of the United Kingdom. They're very staunchly conservative, and it's going to be interesting. They have 10 seats. They can give her a majority, and we would then have the United Kingdom, this sort of PC. Let's not rock the boat. Let's not piss off the Muslims. They would have their government would have to get the support of these Protestant, basically hardliners in order to govern at all. And then you would have some people in the left-wing press say, "Oh, how can she sit with these bigoted people that their leader Ian Paisley used to call Catholics all sorts of names that they were basically baby factories and stuff like that." Well, it's funny how the shoe is on the other foot now for the Liberals, because here's a couple things that Jeremy Corbyn has said about certain groups that may have had a controversy.
In the 90s, you spoke at scores of hardline Republican gatherings which backed the IRA and the armed struggle.
I always wanted, and always do want, peace, always want a dialogue between people of vastly different backgrounds, and dialogue between people of vastly different backgrounds. And the minute silence you referred to was in 1987, and it was for all who had died in Northern Ireland.
That is one of the 8 IRA terrorists that had been killed. That was the purpose of the meeting.
I said all those that have died in Northern Ireland. I made that very, very clear.
But the purpose of the meeting was to honour these terrorists. I mean, as you went to all these hardline Republican meetings, they were backed by the IRA and its apologists. At any time publicly, did you urge them to give up the bomb and the bullet?
I always said that the bombing process would never work, that there wasn't a military solution to be found in Northern Ireland. I made that very clear. I made that very clear in the House of Commons and other places.
Did you urge the IRA to stop the bombs and the bullets? All its front people that you did meet all the time.
I obviously did meet people from Sinn Féin, as indeed I met people from other organisations. And
so what he's doing there is he's weaseling, because there's a game that they play in Northern Ireland where, there's paramilitary groups and then there's political groups that are affiliated with them. And in the case of the IRA, they were always affiliated with Sinn Féin. They had a leader, I think he's still alive, his name is Gerry Adams, who was their leader. He's never admitted publicly to being a member of the IRA, but everybody knows that he's been a member of the IRA. They had another guy named Martin McGuinness, who was basically the commander of the IRA and a member of Sinn Féin. So it's almost like he's saying, I'm not in favor of Planned Parenthood. I dropped my daughter off there or something. Or if he was to say that, I don't believe in the Nation of Islam. I'm just buddies with Louis Farrakhan. It's total weaseling. And the question, he says he never met with the IRA. Sinn Féin was the political arm of the IRA since basically 1969, this Sinn Féin, there's been all these, complicated iterations of it, but he knows that he's lying to this reporter, one of the more famous and ugly reporters in Britain.
I want to first of all say thank you everyone for being here tonight, and say that tomorrow evening it will be my pleasure and my honour to host an event in Parliament where our friends from Hezbollah will be speaking. I'd also invited friends from Hamas to come and speak as well. Unfortunately, the Israelis would not allow them to travel here, so it's going to be only friends from Hezbollah. So far as I'm concerned, that is absolutely the right function of using parliamentary facilities to invite people from other parts of the world.
So this is Jeremy Corbyn, the guy who basically he's gained seats in the Parliament, and I'll be talking about that even more. He gained seats for the Labour Party, admitting to meeting with members of the Hezbollah group. Now, if you don't know who the Hezbollah group is, I'd advise you, they're not just a threat to the Israelis. The Hezbollah group has bombed they've committed bombings against United States and French forces in Lebanon in the 80s. Okay, and those of you that say, oh, it was the 80s, fuck it. I love you people, and I'll be putting out the other video about the 6-day war tomorrow. Not the first video, the second video. A lot of you are pissed off about an attack on the USS Liberty from 1967. So how far back is good for you? And does it really depend on that, or is it something else? The Jeremy Corbyn issue is something that I think 85% of the British, I don't know why I said 85, but the vast majority of British people simply are putting their heads in the sand about this clown and this disgusting person who's first of all, he's a total communist. Which in my mind is worse than what he just said about in this clip about the Hezbollah and Hamas. And like later only recently he's walked back the comments, even though he's been confronted about it many, many times. Jeremy Corbyn is basically the standard bomb-throwing socialist. He hates the rich. He hates the British people as an identity. And he wants to tear it down. And what he would do if he was to become prime minister, which there's very little chance right now, just because of the results do not reflect a coalition that would be viable for him right now. But if he were to become prime minister, he would lead the British economy directly into a ditch, and they would never ever be able to recover unless he was sacked by his own party or something. You have to remember that Britain almost fell into complete economic collapse in the late 70s and early 80s because of striking workers. I've made a video about the militant tendency, which was Corbyn's allies back in the 80s. They were these basically communist infiltrators that took over the Labour Party at the time and scared off most of their voters. And that Theresa May was able to squander such a huge lead to this idiot, this clown, is a testament to two things. First of all, it's a testament to how inept and stupid she is, that she managed the campaign in a transparently careless manner, as if she was complacent. She basically acted as if the office was for her taking. She behaved like Hillary Clinton, at least for this campaign. And I'm not comparing her to Hillary Clinton on the moral level. I'm comparing her to her on the and not just because she's a woman. Also, I'm comparing it to her on the tactical level. This is somebody that she had an opponent that was such a clown, and she didn't go on the attack, first of all. Second of all, her policies, her horrible policies as Home Secretary, allowing in terrorists from ISIS, and that's come home to roost. and allowing in all those migrants and not standing up for the British people during Brexit, and then defending her immigration policy that was one of the reasons that the British people rejected the Conservative government's desire to stay in the European Union. They rejected it. They said, screw you, we're leaving the EU. We don't care that you're the prime minister, to her predecessor, David Cameron. A lot of it was because of her. Her tenure as Home Secretary was a disaster. She was basically, people know today that there's a housing crisis in Great Britain. Why? Partly because of a massive influx of migrants and a low number of tradespeople. So Theresa May was picked. She was selected because she was the least offensive candidate for the establishment. This was somebody who, could reliably be, look at that. I guess you're just going to have to look at the comb over there. But I don't have a comb over. I have a healthy head of hair. But maybe go the other way. Sorry about that. It's very distracting when you're looking at friggin' hair all over your face. But Theresa May, her ineptitude was one of the reasons. Jeremy Corbyn, for all the shit that I just talked about him, was a phenomenal campaigner. He knows how to motivate people. And his supporters did believe in him. And that's one of the reasons that I do say that Buffalo Yogurt was correct in comparing him in many ways to Bernie Sanders, because this is somebody who is able to make the personal connection with a lot of the voters, especially young voters, and get them to support his views. It just so happens that his views include supporting groups that are basically have no regard for human life. They would slaughter you in a second. They don't care about anybody or what religion you are, because all they are there for is to achieve their goals, which in the case of Hezbollah, they are to support Iran's worldwide agenda. Iran has an agenda beyond Iran. It has an agenda beyond Israel and Palestine. It has an agenda beyond Yemen. They want to become the next Muslim superpower. And the blatant contradiction that you have with these leftist voters is that you have them supporting Jeremy Corbyn, a far left, anti-religion, Marxist, hates everything about tradition, hates everything about British values. And who is he in bed with? He's in bed with the most ultra-conservative, basically anti women's rights, anti-minority rights clerics in Iran, and by the way, other countries in Europe, in the Middle East. He's also said that he doesn't care if ISIS terrorists come back to England. He's also said that there's no problem with ISIS recruiters or ISIS people expressing their views in public, because it's just a legitimate point of view. This is somebody who his notions of tolerance have overridden all safety measures of common sense. This guy's completely off his rocker. And this is the guy that Cenk Uygur, Buffalo Yogurt, considered the next prime minister of the United Kingdom. Now, I don't think he's going to be the next prime minister. So by default, Cenk Uygur's prediction is wrong for now, because basically, if you think about it, all he was saying was that he would be the next prime minister. First of all, May is going to stay on, I believe, for the next month or so. Then, what I think is going to happen is that she will be ousted as the conservative leader. Then you will get a race between an establishment conservative and probably a couple of the Brexit conservatives. I think that the person who will emerge at the top will probably be former Mayor of London, Boris Johnson. And when he does, you might see like a decent competition between Johnson and Corbyn. I don't know that. I think Johnson has a little more of a common touch than Jeremy Corbyn. Also, you have to realize that a lot of the people. This is what's bizarre about British politics. Both Corbyn and Theresa May were against the Brexit during the Brexit campaign. The thing is, though, that Corbyn had in the past been very critical of the European Union and hardly ever supported it before he was leader of Labour. He was probably one of the more anti-EU leaders in the history of the Labour Party. But for the campaign, he basically played peekaboo and pretended that he was supporting staying in the EU. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because I think that a lot of the Brexit voters who are on the left decided, why not just take Jeremy Corbyn? He will be, not Theresa May, and he'll continue to support the policies of Brexit, but they'll be in a more socially conscious manner. Those people are morons. Jeremy Corbyn, by doing this, by basically acting like a chameleon and supporting and opposing Brexit, when he knew full well that there was a major undercurrent within his own party against Brexit, that's the equivalent of Bernie Sanders endorsing Hillary Clinton. This is somebody who, for all of his ridiculous positions on terrorism and on immigration and on the economy, the one thing that Jeremy Corbyn agreed to pretend that he didn't agree with was Brexit, which was the first major all-British policy that passed on a nationwide referendum. Okay, this was a politician that basically sacrificed his principles and his honesty in order to stay in power within his own party. So that's about it for Jeremy Corbyn. He also has a couple of idiots on his staff, John McDonnell and Diane Abbott, both of whom are equally incompetent. One of them is known for Diane Abbott's known for like her horrible math. She said something that she was going to like pay police officers like £8,000 a year, that they would hire more, but the figures that she gave, she basically would have had to hire them for £8,000 a year. That's something like, I think that's like $11,000 a year or something, ridiculous. That would have been the person who would have taken Theresa May's old job, the Home Secretary. They had no plan on how to negotiate for Brexit. They also, he had a response about the nuclear Trident system, which is the UK's defense system against nuclear weapons, where he claimed that he wouldn't strike back at a country even if Britain was actually under attack in a nuclear war. He wouldn't retaliate with nuclear weapons if they were already under attack in a nuclear war. So that's what you get. I think I'm very disappointed in how the British performed, but it's not my country, so I guess they can suit themselves. Theresa May will probably be replaced at some point in the next couple months, and we'll see if the Conservatives can continue to roll out their agenda, because, if you just observe what happened tonight, Theresa May have basically given life back to one of the latest communist imposters that there are in the West. So this is Ramon, bold like a leopard. Comment below. Let me know what you think about the UK election. There's a lot of other topics I could have covered. I'm going to cover a related topic next week. Have a great weekend. Maybe I'll see you before it. And Papa bless.